The search for life beyond Earth had always been a dream of scientists, writers, and explorers. For centuries, people looked at the stars and wondered if anyone was out there. Most believed the universe was too big to be empty, but proof was always missing, until a series of shocking discoveries began to change everything. It started quietly, in a laboratory in Arizona. Dr. Helen Ward, an astronomer who had spent her life studying the skies, noticed something unusual in the data from her radio telescope. Among the usual background noise of the cosmos, she found repeating signals. At first, she thought it was interference from satellites or machines, but the pattern was too precise. It matched prime numbers, a language of mathematics that no natural object should create on its own. Helen stared at the screen late into the night, her heart racing. She had studied signals for decades, and this was different. It was intelligent. She printed the results, locked them in a folder, and whispered to herself, "We're not alone." At the same time, strange lights began appearing across the world. In South America, farmers reported glowing spheres moving silently over their fields. In Europe, airline pilots saw disks darting through clouds at impossible speeds. In Asia, fishermen claimed objects rose from the sea, glowing and silent, before vanishing into the stars. At first, each report was dismissed as fantasy, but the number of sightings grew so quickly that even governments could not ignore them. David, a young researcher who had always followed UFO stories, felt a rush of excitement. He read about Helen's discovery online, though it had not been officially confirmed. He collected every report, every video, every article, pinning them to his wall. "This isn't random," he whispered. "They're connected." One evening, David sat outside under the stars with his old telescope. As he adjusted the lens, he saw something that made him freeze. A bright light moved across the sky, steady and silent. It was not a plane, not a satellite. It shifted direction in ways no human craft could. He quickly grabbed his camera and recorded it, his hands shaking. When he played the video back, the light pulsed 3 times, then vanished into darkness. He uploaded the footage online, and within hours, it spread across the world. Some mocked it as fake, but others recognized the same pattern. 3 pulses, reported in sightings across different continents. The mystery was growing louder. Meanwhile, Helen was invited to a government facility. Her discovery of the repeating signal had reached officials, and they wanted answers. She was escorted into a secure room where other scientists already waited. On a large screen, the signal played in bursts, steady and clear. "It's not ours," one official said firmly. "And it's not natural. We believe it's a message." Helen's breath caught. The search for life beyond Earth had just crossed the line from theory to reality. She turned to the group and said, "If this is a message, then they already know we exist." That night, news of the signal leaked, sparking debates across the world. Was it proof of aliens or just another mistake? But deep down, those who studied the data knew the truth. The universe had spoken, and Earth had finally heard. For David, the discovery confirmed everything he had believed. He looked at the stars, his voice trembling with both fear and excitement. "They're out there," he whispered, "and they're coming closer." The first part of the mystery had begun. The discovery of the repeating signal spread across secret government channels faster than the public could imagine. Officially, there was silence. No statements, no confirmations. But inside closed doors, panic and wonder mixed in equal measure. For the first time, humanity was forced to face the possibility that aliens had reached out. Dr. Helen Ward worked day and night in the secure facility where the signal was being studied. The bursts of sound repeated endlessly, steady and precise. Each interval matched prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. It was a universal code, one no natural star or planet could produce. Helen sat with headphones on, listening over and over. It almost felt alive, as if the signal carried intention. She whispered to herself, "Someone is speaking." Meanwhile, strange sightings increased. In Europe, airline pilots reported glowing discs darting through clouds, vanishing before radar could lock onto them. In Asia, fishermen swore they saw objects rise from the sea, dripping with water before streaking into the night sky. In North America, drivers along lonely highways captured shaky videos of lights moving in perfect formation. Each story added to the pressure, each one harder to deny. David followed every report obsessively. His wall of photos and notes grew until it covered nearly every inch of his small study. He circled patterns, drew arrows, and connected sightings with red string. His heart raced as he noticed something new. Many of the sightings matched the same rhythm as Helen's signal. 3 pulses. "It's not just noise," he whispered. "It's coordination." He posted his findings online, where they caught the attention of Sarah, an investigative journalist. Sarah had spent years chasing government secrets, often dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. But when she saw David's research, she knew it was different. She contacted him, and they met at a quiet cafe. "You think the signal and the sightings are connected?" she asked, leaning forward. David nodded. "I don't think... I know. They're sending a pattern, a signature. The same message appears in the sky and in the data." Sarah frowned, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "If you're right, then this isn't just contact. It's communication." As they spoke, new footage surfaced. In Brazil, a crowd at a soccer match looked up to see a glowing triangle of lights hover above the stadium. Thousands of fans froze, their cheers replaced by stunned silence. The lights remained for several minutes, then blinked out at once. The footage went viral within hours. Officials tried to dismiss it as drones, but no one believed it. Helen watched the video late at night in her lab. Her hands trembled. The same triangle had appeared in her signal data, drawn faintly by the bursts of sound. It was undeniable. The ships and the signal were connected. The pressure inside the government facility grew. Some officials argued to release the truth. Others demanded secrecy, fearing chaos. But secrecy was no longer possible. Too many people had seen the lights. Too many videos had spread. The world was waking up on its own. That night, David had another experience. He woke suddenly, his room filled with a faint hum. At first he thought it was a passing truck outside. But then he saw it. A glow seeping through his curtains. He rushed to the window and froze. Above his house, a disk of light hovered silently, its surface shimmering with colors. The air around it vibrated, pulling at his chest. The disk pulsed 3 times, then shot upward into the stars, gone in a blink. David's camera lay forgotten on his desk. For the first time, he had seen it with his own eyes. And the look in his eyes said everything. It was no longer just research. It was real. He called Sarah immediately, his voice shaking. "They're not far away anymore, they're here." And in the facility, Helen studied her latest data. The signal had changed. For the first time, the bursts of sound ended with silence, then repeated. It was no longer just prime numbers. It was a sequence that formed an image on her screen. She stared at it in awe. It was Earth. The image of Earth on Helen's computer screen would not fade from her mind. The signal had shifted, no longer just numbers or patterns, but a direct picture. It meant whoever was sending it knew exactly where to aim. They had found Earth. Inside the facility, scientists argued late into the night. Some believed it was a friendly message, a way of saying, "We see you." Others feared it was the first step of something darker, a warning or even preparation for control. Helen sat quietly, watching the bursts of light repeat across her monitors. Deep inside, she felt it was an invitation. Meanwhile, David couldn't stop thinking about the disk he had seen above his house. He replayed the memory over and over, his heart racing each time. For years, he had researched and collected second-hand stories. But this was different. It was his. He knew the truth now, not as a researcher, but as a witness. Sarah arrived at his door the next morning, holding her phone with the latest news. "You're not the only one," she said. Around the world, reports had exploded overnight. Families in Mexico filmed glowing orbs above their farms. Drivers in Australia captured fleets of lights moving in formation. Fishermen in Japan swore a beam had risen from the ocean, lighting the waves. The world was filling with sightings, each one more direct than before. Together, Sarah and David pored over the reports, searching for connections. David pointed to the timeline. "Look at the rhythm. They all line up with the signal Helen found. Each event happens after a new burst." Sarah frowned, her voice low. "It's not random. They're answering back. This is communication." In the government facility, officials could no longer contain the truth. Too many videos, too many witnesses. Even if they denied it, the people would not believe. But instead of releasing everything, they prepared careful statements, calling the signal unidentified and the sightings unexplained. Helen felt frustration building. "Why lie?" she demanded in a closed meeting. "The world deserves the truth." One general slammed his hand on the table. "The truth will cause panic. Until we know their intentions, we control the story." But control was already slipping. Across cities, people gathered at night, watching the skies. In parks and rooftops, strangers stood together, pointing, waiting. Some brought telescopes, others simply used their eyes. Hope and fear filled the air. It was no longer about if aliens existed. It was about when they would reveal themselves. One evening, Sarah convinced David to join her at a hill overlooking their town. Dozens of people stood in silence, staring upward. Suddenly, a line of lights appeared in the sky, moving slowly, evenly, brighter than stars. Gasps filled the crowd. The lights pulsed 3 times in rhythm, then disappeared all at once. David's hands shook as he whispered, "They're answering us in front of everyone now." Helen, at the same moment, watched her monitors in shock. The signal had changed again. The burst now formed not just Earth, but a line extending outward to a star system many light years away. She called her team. "They're showing us where to go." But fear grew just as fast as excitement. News outlets filled with debates. Were the visitors inviting humanity into the galaxy or leading them into a trap? Religious leaders spoke of prophecies, politicians warned of danger, scientists argued about survival. The world was divided, unable to agree. Helen, David, and Sarah found themselves connected by fate. Helen with the signal, David with his witness, Sarah with her search for truth. They realized the encounters were building toward something larger, not random, not accidents, but a deliberate plan. The visitors were preparing humanity for a moment of decision. That night, Helen stood alone at her telescope, her eyes tired but determined. She whispered into the darkness, "If you're out there, we're listening." The stars blinked, silently back, but she felt certain they had already heard. The image of Earth on Helen's computer screen would not fade from her mind. The signal had shifted, no longer just numbers or patterns, but a direct picture. It meant whoever was sending, it knew exactly where to aim. They had found Earth. Inside the facility, scientists argued late into the night. Some believed it was a friendly message, a way of saying, "We see you." Others feared it was the first step of something darker, a warning or even preparation for control. Helen sat quietly, watching the bursts of light repeat across her monitors. Deep inside, she felt it was an invitation. Meanwhile, David couldn't stop thinking about the disk he had seen above his house. He replayed the memory over and over, his heart racing each time. For years, he had researched and collected second-hand stories. But this was different. It was his. He knew the truth now, not as a researcher, but as a witness. Sarah arrived at his door the next morning, holding her phone with the latest news. "You're not the only one," she said. Around the world, reports had exploded overnight. Families in Mexico filmed glowing orbs above their farms. Drivers in Australia captured fleets of lights moving in formation. Fishermen in Japan swore a beam had risen from the ocean, lighting the waves. The world was filling with sightings, each one more direct than before. Together, Sarah and David pored over the reports, searching for connections. David pointed to the timeline. "Look at the rhythm. They all line up with the signal Helen found. Each event happens after a new burst." Sarah frowned, her voice low. "It's not random. They're answering back. This is communication." In the government facility, officials could no longer contain the truth. Too many videos, too many witnesses. Even if they denied it, the people would not believe. But instead of releasing everything, they prepared careful statements, calling the signal unidentified and the sightings unexplained. Helen felt frustration building. "Why lie?" she demanded in a closed meeting. "The world deserves the truth." One general slammed his hand on the table. "The truth will cause panic. Until we know their intentions, we control the story." But control was already slipping. Across cities, people gathered at night, watching the skies. In parks and rooftops, strangers stood together, pointing, waiting. Some brought telescopes, others simply used their eyes. Hope and fear filled the air. It was no longer about if aliens existed. It was about when they would reveal themselves. One evening, Sarah convinced David to join her at a hill overlooking their town. Dozens of people stood in silence, staring upward. Suddenly, a line of lights appeared in the sky, moving slowly, evenly, brighter than stars. Gasps filled the crowd. The lights pulsed 3 times in rhythm, then disappeared all at once. David's hands shook as he whispered, "They're answering us in front of everyone now." Helen, at the same moment, watched her monitors in shock. The signal had changed again. The bursts now formed not just Earth, but a line extending outward, to a star system many light years away. She called her team. "They're showing us where to go." But fear grew just as fast as excitement. News outlets filled with debates. Were the visitors inviting humanity into the galaxy or leading them into a trap? Religious leaders spoke of prophecies. Politicians warned of danger. Scientists argued about survival. The world was divided, unable to agree. Helen, David, and Sarah found themselves connected by fate. Helen with the signal, David with his witness, Sarah with her search for truth. They realized the encounters were building towards something larger. Not random, not accidents, but a deliberate plan. The visitors were preparing humanity for a moment of decision. That night, Helen stood alone at her telescope, her eyes tired, but determined. She whispered into the darkness, "If you're out there, we're listening." The stars blinked silently back, but she felt certain they had already heard. The world could no longer pretend nothing was happening. The signal, the sightings, and the strange lights in the sky were undeniable. People everywhere watched the heavens with both fear and hope, waiting for what might come next. In the secure government facility, Helen studied the latest data from the signal. The bursts of sound no longer showed just Earth and the nearby star system. They had grown more complex. Lines now stretched outward like a map, connecting stars together. To Helen, it looked like a network, as if the visitors were showing that the galaxy was already linked and Earth was simply the newest point on the map. She shared her findings with her team, but arguments broke out again. Some scientists believed the network was an invitation. Others believed it was a warning, showing how small Earth truly was compared to the galaxy. Helen pressed her palms against the table and whispered, "It's not a warning. It's an introduction." Meanwhile, Sarah and David traveled to Mexico to investigate the reports of glowing orbs above farms. The villagers welcomed them, showing phone videos of spheres hovering silently over fields at night. One farmer told them, "The lights come when the crops are ready. It's like they are watching how we live." The burned patches on the ground and the frightened animals suggested something powerful had been there. David took notes while Sarah recorded interviews. As they prepared to leave, a young girl tugged Sarah's sleeve and said softly, "The lights were beautiful. They made me feel calm, like they were trying to say hello." Sarah stared into her eyes and realized the truth. Not all who saw the lights felt fear. Some felt peace. Back in the United States, protests grew louder. Crowds gathered outside government buildings, chanting for answers. Some carried signs that said, "Tell us the truth." Others warned, "Do not trust them." The world was split between those who wanted contact and those who demanded resistance. The government struggled to maintain order, but the silence from the ships made the fear worse. One night, Helen was called urgently to the facility. The signal had shifted again. This time, the bursts projected something even clearer, a human hand reaching upward and a glowing shape descending to meet it. The room fell silent. It was the most direct message yet. The visitors were not hiding their intent. They wanted contact. David and Sarah received word of the new signal from Helen herself. She trusted them more than the officials around her. Meeting in secret, she showed them the projection on her laptop. David's eyes widened. "It's a handshake," he whispered. Sarah felt a chill. "It means they're ready." But the question remained. Was humanity ready? The tension grew when another public sighting occurred, this time over a major city. In Paris, thousands of people in the streets looked up as a disk of light appeared above the Eiffel Tower. It hovered in silence for nearly 10 minutes, shining like a second moon. Phones recorded, live broadcasts spread worldwide. The crowd below shifted between cheers and prayers. When the disk finally rose into the clouds, the world knew that secrecy was over. The visitors were showing themselves in the heart of civilization. Governments scrambled. Military jets were launched, but none dared to attack. Scientists tried to calm the public, but their words sounded hollow. For every voice that spoke of peace, another shouted of invasion. Humanity's fear threatened to destroy any chance of unity. Late that night, Sarah asked David a question that haunted them both. "What if they've been here all along, waiting for us to grow ready?" David looked at the sky, silent for a moment. Then he said, "If that's true, then the real question is, are we ready now?" Above Earth, lights pulsed in the darkness, steady and patient. The galaxy was waiting for an answer. The sight of a glowing disk above Paris had shaken the entire world. It was no longer possible to deny or hide the truth. The visitors had revealed themselves openly, not in the shadows, not in remote villages, but in the center of human civilization. Billions had watched the footage live, and for the first time, humanity as a whole faced the same question. What comes next? In the United States, emergency meetings filled government halls. Generals warned that the visitors were preparing for control, while scientists argued that their silence meant peace. If they wanted to harm us, they would have done it already. Helen said firmly during one heated discussion. But fear was louder than reason. Soldiers were placed on alert, and plans for defense, though hopeless, were drawn up. Across the world, the public reacted in different ways. In Brazil, churches overflowed with people praying. In Tokyo, thousands filled the streets carrying signs that read, "Welcome." In Moscow, officials ordered blackouts, fearing the ships might target cities. Every nation prepared in its own way, but no one truly knew what to expect. Sarah and David returned from Mexico with their recordings of the orbs. They met Helen in secret once more. She showed them the most recent signal. This time, the bursts created not just the image of hands meeting, but a clear pathway, Earth connected to a glowing star system, the same one that had appeared before. "They're inviting us," Helen whispered. David leaned closer. "It's not just a message, it's instructions." Sarah frowned, tapping the table nervously. "But why now? Why reveal themselves so openly?" Helen thought for a moment, before replying. "Because they think we're ready. Or because they want to see if we are." That same night, new sightings shocked the planet. In Africa, dozens of small glowing craft appeared above villages, moving in perfect formation. In Australia, a massive triangle of light hovered above the desert, its edges stretching across the horizon. In North America, drivers along highways reported beams of light descending into forests. Everywhere the same message repeated. The visitors were here, and they were watching. Crowds gathered in city squares across the globe, pointing their phones at the sky. Live streams showed millions of people staring upward in awe and fear. Some cheered, others cried, but none could look away. Humanity's oldest question, "Are we alone?" had been answered. David found himself restless, unable to sleep. He stepped outside one evening and looked at the stars. For a moment, he thought he saw faint lights pulsing in rhythm with the signal Helen had discovered. He whispered into the night, "We see you." Helen, too, stayed awake in her observatory. She replayed the signal again and again, her mind racing. Each burst felt less like data and more like a voice. She pressed her hand against the monitor and whispered, "What do you want from us?" Sarah worked late, typing her notes by lamplight. She felt the weight of her role, not as a scientist or a researcher, but as a storyteller. The world needed truth, and she had the pieces. But she also feared what might happen if the full truth was revealed too soon. She sighed and closed her laptop. "The world isn't ready," she muttered. The world itself, however, was moving forward. New signals began to appear, detected by observatories across continents. They were stronger, clearer, no longer just prime numbers but complex shapes. Some patterns resembled cities, others looked like maps of distant planets. The visitors were sharing knowledge, piece by piece. But along with wonder came fear. Protests turned violent in some places. People demanded weapons, demanded war, demanded safety from what they did not understand. Fires burned in the streets, sirens wailed, and chaos grew. The visitors said nothing, but their silence seemed to test humanity more than any message could. And then, something extraordinary happened. Over the Pacific Ocean, a ship larger than any seen before descended from the clouds. It stretched across the sky like a floating city, glowing with thousands of lights. The waves below surged as if bowing to its presence. The world watched in silence as the ship hovered, motionless, for hours. Then, slowly, a single beam of light stretched down toward the ocean, glowing like a bridge. For the first time, it was clear. The visitors were not just observing, they were inviting. The arrival of the massive ship over the Pacific Ocean was unlike anything the world had ever seen. For hours, the glowing city in the sky hung motionless, visible from satellites and coastlines alike. The oceans rose and fell as if pulled by an unseen force. Billions of people watched live streams, their eyes fixed on the silent craft. It was not just another sighting. This was an open presence, a declaration. In the government facility, chaos erupted. Generals barked orders demanding fighter jets be launched, though they knew weapons would be useless. Scientists pleaded for calm, arguing that the visitors had shown no aggression. Helen stood at the center of the storm, staring at the glowing beam stretching from the ship to the waves. "It's not an attack," she whispered. "It's an invitation." David sat at home with Sarah, his laptop glowing with feeds from around the world. Crowds filled beaches, pointing upward in awe. In some places, people knelt and prayed. In others, they celebrated, cheering as fireworks lit the sky. Sarah scribbled notes, her voice steady. "This is history," she said. David nodded slowly. "But history can go either way." The beam from the ship shimmered brighter, pulsing in a steady rhythm. Every pulse matched the original signal Helen had discovered. Prime numbers. A universal code. Helen felt her heart pound as she realized what it meant. They're confirming it's them. The signal was their voice, and now they're speaking directly. Over the next few days, strange phenomena spread across the planet. In Africa, fields bloomed with crops twice their normal size. In Asia, power grids flickered in perfect sync with the pulses from the ship. In North America, animals behaved oddly, birds circling in patterns, whales gathering near coasts, dogs staring silently at the sky. The visitors were not just showing themselves. They were touching the planet itself. The public grew restless. Some saw miracles in the changes. Others saw danger. Rumors spread of governments hiding even greater secrets. Protests turned violent in several cities, with clashes between those demanding contact and those demanding resistance. Fires burned, chants echoed, and chaos threatened to overshadow the wonder of the moment. Inside the lab, Helen studied the beam with every tool she had. The data showed energy unlike anything on Earth, clean and powerful, capable of reshaping entire systems. She whispered to her team, "This is technology beyond imagination. It could change everything, energy, medicine, even life itself." But the officials around her remained cautious, their faces tight with fear. Sarah pushed for the truth to be shared with the world. "You can't hide this anymore," she told Helen in a private call. "People need to know what's really happening." Helen sighed heavily. "The people deserve answers, yes, but if we release everything too fast, panic will destroy us before they even arrive." Meanwhile, David's dreams returned stronger than ever. He saw visions of the ship's interior, vast halls glowing with light, walls alive with shifting patterns. He saw figures, tall and thin, their eyes dark and endless, and he heard the same message over and over: choose. Time is ending. When he woke, his chest ached as if the dream had been real. He told Sarah, "They're not going to wait forever. They want us to decide, to step forward." Sarah looked at him seriously. "And if we don't?" David's voice was low. "Then they'll decide for us." The tension reached a breaking point when the ship over the Pacific finally moved. Slowly, it rose higher into the sky, its lights flashing in patterns that spread across the horizon. The beam widened, stretching like a path toward the stars. For the first time, humanity understood what it meant. It was a bridge, an invitation to leave Earth and follow. Crowds on beaches gasped, many falling to their knees. Around the world, televisions and phones replayed the image of the glowing bridge again and again. Helen pressed her hands to the glass in her lab. "They're not just visiting," she whispered. "They're opening the door." The decision was no longer distant. It was here. Humanity stood on the edge of the greatest choice in its history. The galaxy was waiting. The glowing bridge of light stretched from the massive ship into the Pacific Ocean, and the world stood frozen. Billions of eyes stared upward, some with hope, others with dread. The visitors had revealed their intent more clearly than ever. They wanted humanity to follow. In the government facility, silence filled the war room. Generals whispered about traps, scientists spoke of opportunities, and leaders argued over risks. Helen watched the beam pulsing steadily, each rhythm a reminder of the signal she had studied for months. "It's the same pattern," she whispered. "It's communication. They are telling us the door is open." But fear dominated the discussion. One general slammed his fist against the table. "We can't risk sending anyone. This could be a trick to take our best and leave us defenseless." Helen turned to him sharply. "If they wanted us gone, they could do it without tricks. They're waiting for a decision." Her words fell into the silence, but few had the courage to agree. Meanwhile, David's dreams became unbearable. Each night he walked across the glowing bridge in his mind, the stars pulling him forward. He saw alien figures at the end of the path, their dark eyes watching with patience. He heard the same voice, calm and steady. "Choose now." He woke trembling, drenched in sweat. When he told Sarah, she pressed his hand. "Maybe the dreams mean you've already been chosen." Sarah herself felt torn. As a journalist, she had always chased the truth, but now the truth was heavier than she imagined. She wrote notes by candlelight, her words flowing quickly. The choice of one generation will decide the future of all. She knew the world was not united. Wars and protests showed that humanity was more divided than ever, even in the face of something greater than itself. Outside, the streets boiled with chaos. Some marched with banners of peace, calling the visitors saviors. Others demanded weapons, shouting that Earth must defend itself. Clashes grew violent. Fires lit the night sky in some cities, while in others, people gathered in silence to pray. The world was split, even as the galaxy waited. The ship above the Pacific grew brighter with each passing night. Smaller crafts appeared, glowing silently, as they hovered above coasts and cities. They did not attack, but their presence was overwhelming. Humanity could no longer look away. The visitors were here, and the moment of choice could not be delayed. In a secret meeting, Helen, Sarah, and David sat together. Helen spoke first. "The government is paralyzed. They won't decide. But the visitors aren't waiting for governments. They're waiting for people." David nodded, his face pale but resolute. "I've seen it in the dreams. They want a representative, someone to step forward." Sarah looked at them both, her voice firm. "Then it has to be you, David. You've been marked by this from the start." David felt his chest tighten. He was no leader, no soldier, no scientist, just a man who had looked up at the stars and wondered. But deep inside, he knew Sarah was right. The dreams, the sightings, the connection, it was not random. He had been chosen, not by governments, but by the galaxy itself. The decision spread quickly. News leaked that a small envoy would be formed, volunteers to step into the beam of light. Panic and awe filled the world. Who would go? Who would carry Earth's first step into the unknown? Crowds gathered on beaches, waiting, watching the beam shimmer across the horizon. The night before the journey, David stood alone by the ocean, staring at the bridge of light. Sarah approached quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly. David nodded. "Terrified, but more afraid of what happens if we don't go." Helen joined them, her eyes shining with determination. "This is our chance, our proof, our future." Above them, the ship pulsed, with light, patient, and steady. The galaxy was watching. The time for waiting had ended. The next step would change everything. The world held its breath as the day of decision arrived. The massive ship above the Pacific glowed brighter than ever, its beams stretching like a bridge of light across the waves. Crowds gathered on every coast, millions staring upward in awe and fear. Humanity's first step into the galaxy was at hand. David stood at the edge of the shore, his heart pounding. Sarah was beside him, holding her notebook tightly, while Helen adjusted her glasses, her eyes filled with determination. Around them, soldiers, scientists, and reporters waited in silence. Cameras streamed the moment live to billions across the world. The ocean shimmered as the beam pulsed in rhythm. David felt the same vibration in his chest as in his dreams. The voice returned, calm and steady. "Come." He took a deep breath. "It's time." Sarah touched his arm. "You don't have to do this alone." David looked at her and Helen, then at the endless sea of faces behind them. "I may be the one chosen, but this isn't about me. It's about all of us." With trembling steps, David walked forward into the beam. The light surrounded him instantly, warm and weightless. Gasps echoed from the crowd as his body lifted gently into the air. Sarah and Helen followed without hesitation, stepping into the glow. Together, they rose, carried upward toward the massive ship. Inside, there was no metal, no machinery, only endless light and shifting patterns. The air hummed softly, filling them with calm. Before them appeared figures, tall and thin, their eyes dark and endless. They radiated no threat, only presence. One figure raised a glowing hand. Instantly, images filled David's mind. Visions of distant planets, glowing cities in the stars, oceans of light, and countless beings of every shape and size. The galaxy was alive, full, waiting. The message was clear. You are not alone. You were never alone. The choice is yours. Tears welled in David's eyes as the vision ended. He turned to Sarah and Helen, both equally stunned. They didn't speak, but they understood. The visitors were offering knowledge, connection, and entry into a greater world. But it required unity, something humanity had never truly mastered. The figure stepped closer, placing its glowing hand on David's shoulder. A surge of energy filled him, not painful, but overwhelming. In that moment, he felt the weight of responsibility. Earth had been invited, but Earth would have to choose peace over fear, unity over division. The galaxy would not accept a world at war with itself. When the beam lowered them back to the shore, the world erupted. Cheers, screams, and tears filled the air as David, Sarah, and Helen stepped onto the sand, their faces pale but radiant. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and soldiers pushed back the crowd. David raised his hand, his voice trembling but clear. "They are real. They are waiting, and they want us to join them. But first we must stand as one." His words echoed across the world. Some wept with joy, others shouted in anger, but no one doubted the truth anymore. Life beyond Earth was real, and the universe was far bigger than humanity had ever imagined. That night, the ship above the Pacific slowly rose higher, its lights fading into the stars. The beam of light vanished, leaving only silence. But the world knew it was not the end. It was the beginning. The visitors had shown their hand. The next step belonged to humanity. Helen returned to her observatory, her notebooks now filled with star maps and signals. Sarah wrote her story, determined to tell it with honesty and hope. David looked at the sky every night, hearing the echo of the voice in his heart. Choose, and above, in the endless dark, the galaxy waited.